Hi there, my name is Chad with New England Roller Derby Report. Um, I'm going to take another stab at this. I think my first video, I felt like it was just too long. This should be a brief introduction on OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, and where to go get it. So we're going to take another quick stab at this today. First thing, let's go over to where we'll find it. That's going to be obsproject.com. Now, depending on what you're going to use for a computer, you'll find it. The only thing that's presented here is OBS Studio. Um, we'll be talking about the Windows version today. So it's the 64-bit version of OBS Studio. Once you have that downloaded, it's a very straightforward install. I'm not going to cover that. You can install it, and once you get it going, you'll see it's up. Once you start OBS, you're probably going to see that it's in studio mode. For what we're doing with streaming roller derby, we're not going to really use studio mode. So you can click that again and it'll go away. And then you'll be back here just in the standard OBS view that you'll have. Quick overview of what we're going to see on this page. First thing to note is scenes. So OBS is like for how I use it, each scene is a camera. So I'll have one camera that's my tall track camera, and I'll have a scoreboard under that. And then I might have another scene that's my lower corner 2 camera or corner 1 camera, and then that'll also have a scoreboard over it. So when I follow the action of the pack, I'll click from scene 1 to scene 2, and that's how I make my transitions from camera to camera. If I have other things I wanted to do, like if I wanted to add a sponsor, then I would add another scene. I usually like to use my tall overhead camera as the background, so I would introduce another camera to that, and then I would put my graphical information over that. We're going to build a source here in just a few minutes. We actually can do that right now. So we're going to go over here to scene. We're going to go to sources here, and we're going to add a source. So we're going to add a video capture device, create new, and it's just going to be named video capture device. But if you want and you want to kind of keep things smooth, you could go let's call this turn 1 camera. All right, so you can see it's grabbing the LifeCam Studio already that's up there, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to configure this video because this camera will actually do a little bit wider, um, a wider resolution, and it's also not focused. So let's configure video, and the configure video properties box will come up. Let's work on actually go over to camera control. Now autofocus is turned off right now. When you set up a camera, and I think most teams will end up using a USB camera of some sort, you're going to want to uncheck auto, because what that does is every time somebody comes around the track, it's going to try to focus on them. Or if you have an outside pack ref coming by your camera at the same time as the pack comes by, it's going to struggle to focus on that, and you'll find the camera's always trying to focus. Well, in doing that, you're using CPU resources on your computer. So we want to uncheck autofocus. I usually try to focus on something mid-range on the track to get as close as possible. These are other settings that your camera may or may not have. I'm using a Microsoft LifeCam Studio. I'll talk about that probably in a little bit later video as I go over some hardware stuff. All right, so for those properties, that's all we're going to change right now. Okay. I'm going to scroll down here. Now, this is still ultimately under the properties for this turn 1 camera. I need to use a custom resolution because I don't like the resolution that it has. So I'm going to actually choose 1280 by 720. Now, most of the streaming that I've always done has always been 1280 by 720. For streaming, generally I don't have a great internet connection. So to be able to upload that information is really tricky. If if you're doing it 1080, it's a lot more information, and sometimes it just doesn't. You don't have the ability to be able to upload something that higher resolution. So I typically stick with 720. All right, you'll see we've got all this like space on the outside of the box. That's because the we're actually set up in general for a 1080 broadcast, and we'll fix that here in just a minute. But we have the turn one camera, and so we're going to leave that for now. So there's our camera. We've added that as a source. If we were going to add other things to it, we could add other components. This is where we would add if we wanted to do our overlay. We'll talk about that. That's actually already up in a second video. But just to give you an idea, if you wanted to add something like an image, I could add an image, and I'm going to browse for an image on my computer, and I'll go over to pictures, and here's the Nerd Derby logo. I can open that. Okay. And then I can kind of just shrink it down a little bit, put it wherever I want. So there's the Nerd Derby logo in the corner. So that's how easy it is to add images. When I do games, and if I was going to do, I've done this before where I'll add a team logo on here, and then I'll put their team names down the side, and it looks really cool. You can go back and look in some of our other videos if you want to check that out. I'm sure I'll be touching on that too in an upcoming video. All right, so our mixer over here, our audio, you'll see that I have desktop audio selected. There's not a lot going on with that right now. I don't have a lot set up for audio. Generally, what we've just done is we've got turn one camera. So now we have turn one camera over here as an audio source. If you're not going to have announcers, it's okay to use the turn one camera as your audio source. But if you do want to have an announcer on here, what we're going to do is we're going to change some properties over here in this camera. So instead of using audio from the camera, I'm going to select audio output mode, and I'm going to do output desktop audio, wave out. Okay. So now we have the desktop audio right here, and you'll see that it's kind of going up and down. That's because of that's because there's music playing, and so it's just kind of showing that music. All right. So this would now kind of turn one camera in this case now is not really doing anything for a video. Scene transitions, I usually use a cut. I don't want to fade. If I have two instances up there, just kind of, I mean, if I was doing a video production, I would use a fade. But with action on the track, you always want to use a cut. And that matters between selecting scenes over here. If I had another scene and I had a transition that was a fade, when I clicked on the next scene, it would just take a like 300 millisecond fade to go over. So then we have start streaming, start recording, studio mode, which we talked about, and then settings, and then of course exit. Start streaming is the button. That's the big button. That's the one that you hit to start sending your information to YouTube or to Twitch or wherever you're streaming to. Start recording will record your production locally onto your hard drive. Something I suggest on that is try to not record onto the same hard drive that your operating system's on. So if you only have one hard drive, if you have just a C drive, I try to not record to my C drive. I'm fortunate enough on my desktop that we lug around Conky over here. Conky has a D drive as a solid state hard drive that's really fast, and I'm able to just record my game straight to that, and it doesn't really have any adverse effects to the production at all. All right, so let's take a look at some settings, all right? This is kind of where the nuts and bolts start to happen. For the most part, on the general tab, we're not going to really change anything. And my goal today is really, I just want to get you so that you can have a one camera setup with an overlay. And today we're going to work on just this video is going to be getting that one camera set up. So we go down to stream because general doesn't really have anything that we need to do yet. We're not that level. We're not at a level where we need to change anything there. YouTube streaming is already on here. A lot of the server settings, as far as like the ingest server, is already there. We've got other options. I mean, if you wanted to do Twitch streaming, you could. I don't think anyone's streaming Derby on Twitch yet. That might be interesting to take a look at. So primary YouTube ingest server is what I always have selected, and then we have the stream key. Now your stream key is kind of like your address of where your stream is going to go. What I will show you now is we're going to go over to YouTube, and I'm going to just sign in with my account. I'm already signed in. And I'm going to go over here to the Creator Studio. And I just did this morning. I made sure I was all set up to be able to take a stream if I wanted to. So I go over here and I click on my live streaming, and that's going to bring me to my live streaming studio. You'll see I'm offline because I'm not streaming right now. I'm actually just recording. All right. Last streamed 15 minutes ago. That's weird. I've never streamed. But this is where you get your stream name, the key, that address to tell where to send its stream to. If I clicked reveal, that's where I would be able to see my key. I can't click reveal right now because each key is unique. You don't want to share your stream key with anyone. So this is where I would grab my stream key. I'd copy that. I'd go back over to Open Broadcaster, maybe, and then I would paste it right in here. And then the stream key is set up. So now under output, I've actually changed this down to 2400. If you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 2400 to 2800 on your bit rate, that's probably a fair amount. It's possible to go up in your bit rate, and maybe you're able to do that. But as a rule, what I'm finding is that 2400 is kind of 2500 is kind of where things work best for what I'm able to get for internet access and for what my computer will handle. So I kind of stick right around 2500. For the software encoder, or for the encoder, I always use software X264. There are other options here, like if you have an NVIDIA card that will allow you to encode video, you can use the NVIDIA hardware encoder as well. Audio bitrate comes in standard at 160. You can lower that if you wanted to, for just talking about voice. I've never had a problem with doing it at 160. Recording path, this is where you're going to select where you want your stream to record to. In this case, I have a folder called How to Stream Derby on my D drive. And recording quality, same as stream. So I could actually do this high quality, medium file size, or you can change the file size. I might actually play around with that for my stream, as I think my instant replays are a little bit less quality than the original stream, so it downgrades when I do an instant replay. You can choose, by default, it's going to be the recording format will be Flash video. I always select MP4 because MP4 is a little bit more forgiving when it goes to try to do some editing. The only problem is if something happens to my stream, if my computer were to get shut down all of a sudden, my recording wouldn't be any good because I wasn't able to finalize the video. So you have to take that, of course, as a warning here. It can be unrecoverable if something happens. I take my chances on that. I've never had that happen. It might happen someday. If that's the case, that's too bad, But I'm streaming up to YouTube, and wherever my stream ends, the video will end there as well. All right, so there's the recording format audio. There's only two sample rates, 44.1 and 48. 44.1, I think, is what YouTube does it at. I'd have to check, but you really can't go wrong in either one. I guess it's possible that one could be wrong for a different streaming service, but for what I've always done, 44.1 works okay. I've only ever changed my channels, my audio channels, a couple of times. I've actually done mono before just to try to see if it would help with lag situations. Right now, desktop audio device, I have it set to my headset. Typically, the speaker's 7 high definition audio device. This is where you'd be selecting what your audio device is on your computer. And that's important because when it comes to audio going onto the stream, you're telling OBS to listen to audio here and play that audio on the stream. So I'll select that and we'll see. It'll probably change some things down here in our audio section that's under this window. Video, this one happens to be at 1920 by 1080. Generally, I stream in 720, so I'll just change that. I'm going to change it to 720. My output scaled resolution, which basically is, do you want us to scale this information? And yeah, we do. We want you to scale it down to 720 for for YouTube. Downscale filter, this is where you're going to have to play around with your machine to see what works best for you. Sharpen scaling, 16 samples, I think is where I've basically been. And then common frames per second value, 30. We're just going to stick with 30 frames per second. 60 frames per second is cool. Sometimes there's a better visual quality, and it's certainly better for taking a slow motion video capture later on. But ultimately, that's twice as much information, and most derby teams are not going to have that kind of an internet access available to them. They just don't have that kind of bandwidth. Hotkeys. Only thing I ever do with hotkeys is the hotkey that I set up for my instant replay, which we'll talk about in a later video. Advanced. Process priority, video. This is probably not going to change for you. Audio monitoring device. We're going to change that to the high definition audio speakers. So that's if I had speakers plugged in, which I don't. File name formatting. This is just going to put a month, day, hour, minutes, seconds to when your video was recorded. And then replay, buffer, file name. We'll talk about this later when we get to the replay. Stream delay. I don't use stream delay. There's no need to. It's also using a little bit more memory on your system for you to be able to do that. And automatically reconnect. This is kind of a big one for something like a live sporting event. You want to be reconnecting as quick as possible. Retry delay. I usually put that down to something like just a couple of seconds, and then I cranked my retries up to 60 just in case I'm not at the table when we're disconnected. I want it to continue to retry if I'm not there, because sometimes I have other people who will run the board for me. All right, so that's kind of it for settings. That was really quick and dirty, and that was awful fast. I apologize. All right, so we changed our screen resolution to 720. So now all of a sudden this camera fits. You'll remember the camera we decided was going to be at 720. That turn 1 camera properties. All right, so that is the basics on setting up OBS, getting a camera going. We added a little graphic. You can add your team's logo if you want to do that. And we're going to come in right around well, at least we'll be under 20 minutes. I think the last time I did one of these videos, I went for 40 minutes, which is just ridiculous. No one has time for that. As always, please ask me questions if you have questions. You can find us on Facebook if you look up Nerd Derby. Twitter, sometimes I use that. And certainly here on YouTube if you want to check that out. And if you want to subscribe or follow or whatever it is that YouTube does, that would be awesome. And then you'll get a notification whenever we do these crazy videos, or more importantly, when we do some live derby. All right, so I'm going to end this video right now. I will talk to you all later. There's actually a video 2 that's already up that talks about putting on the scoreboard overlay using the Carolina Roller Girls software. I may redo that one too, but for now, that one seemed okay. This one was just a little bit long, and now I'm just making it longer because I'm talking even more. Have a fantastic day.